I never thought I would say this, but the safest place in my life turned out to be the most dangerous. My bedroom, the one room where I should have felt the most secure, became a stage for betrayal that shook me to my core. It all started on a quiet Sunday morning when the sunlight was creeping through the curtains, and I was cleaning out the top shelf of my wardrobe. I remember pulling down an old box of photos, dust falling onto my hair, and suddenly my eyes caught a small, blinking red light tucked between the books on the nightstand across the room. At first, I thought it was some random electronic toy or maybe a charger I had forgotten about. But as I got closer, my stomach dropped. It was a tiny hidden camera, perfectly angled at the bed. My heart raced so fast I could hear the pounding in my ears. I froze just staring at it, my hands trembling. A dozen questions fired through my mind like bullets. Who put it there? How long had it been recording? What had it seen? I looked around the room as if the walls themselves might answer me. For a second, I thought maybe I was overreacting. Maybe it was something else. But when I reached out, touched the lens, and felt its cold, glassy surface, I knew exactly what it was. Fear quickly shifted into rage, my chest tightening, my breathing shallow. Who would do this to me? I whispered out loud, my voice breaking. The betrayal wasn't abstract, it was real. It was inside my home, and it was watching me. My mind raced through everyone who had access to the house. My boyfriend Daniel, our landlord, maybe even a stranger who broke in. But how could I not have noticed? I felt sick thinking about all the private moments that might have been recorded. I unplugged it immediately, holding the device in my hand as though it might bite me. It was small, black and almost invisible when placed against the shadows of the nightstand. My legs felt weak, and I collapsed onto the bed, gripping it tightly. That's when the most haunting thought hit me. Whoever put this here didn't do it by accident. It was deliberate, planned, and meant to spy on me. And if I didn't act fast, I knew I might never find out the truth. I sat there clutching the tiny camera like it was a venomous snake, my hands shaking so badly that it almost slipped from my grip. My heart was hammering against my ribs, and I could feel sweat forming on my forehead even though the room was cool. I wanted to scream, cry, and run all at the same time, but instead I forced myself to stay quiet and think. Every corner of the room suddenly felt unfamiliar, every shadow suspicious. I slowly turned my head, scanning the walls, the lamps, even the ceiling fan for more hidden devices. What if this wasn't the only one? The thought made my stomach twist. I grabbed my phone and quickly opened the camera app, shining the flashlight into every crevice, behind the picture frames, under the bed. My heart stopped when I found nothing else, but the dread didn't ease. Whoever did this had been careful, patient, and bold enough to invade my most private space. The anger burned deeper now, like fire in my veins. But under that anger there was something else, fear of who it could be. Daniel had been acting distant lately, always on his phone, leaving early and coming home late with excuses that never added up. I remembered a week ago when he accidentally left his toolkit in the bedroom after supposedly fixing a squeaky window. My chest tightened as the pieces began to form a terrifying picture. Could it really be him? Could the man I trusted more than anyone be the one watching me in secret? I didn't want to believe it, but the camera was real, and it didn't plant itself. I heard the sound of a car outside and my heart leapt into my throat. Was Daniel back early? I quickly stuffed the camera into my hoodie pocket, trying to calm my breathing. My fingers were cold as ice as I sat there on the bed, pretending to scroll through my phone while my mind screamed with panic. If it was him, confronting him now could be dangerous. But if it wasn't, I risked accusing the wrong person. I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't let whoever did this think they had won. I needed to be smarter, calmer, and 2 steps ahead. That night I barely slept, lying awake staring at the ceiling while my mind spun like a storm. Every creak of the house sounded louder. Every shadow looked darker. And I couldn't stop imagining someone sitting somewhere watching me through a screen. At 3 a.m. I sat up, clutching the hidden camera again, my thoughts sharp and relentless. I had 2 options: Confront Daniel right away or gather proof before making a move. Confronting him without evidence could end in denial, gaslighting, or worse. I decided to play it smart. The next morning, when Daniel left for work, I watched him through the window as his car drove away and waited for the street to grow silent. Then I went to the hardware store and bought a small hidden voice recorder, a second phone with a prepaid SIM, and a lockbox for my personal documents. My hands were trembling as I swiped my card, but my eyes were steady. If Daniel was spying on me, I was going to turn the tables and catch him in the act. When I got back home, I searched the house again more carefully, even the bathroom vents and smoke detectors, but there were no other cameras. That almost made it worse because it meant this one had been placed with deliberate precision. I hid the tiny camera in the lockbox along with the receipt for the recorder, then set up my phone to start secretly recording whenever Daniel was home. That night when he returned, I forced a smile, pretending everything was normal. "How was work?" I asked, keeping my voice light even though my heart was pounding. "Long day," he muttered, tossing his keys onto the counter and heading to the shower without another word. His phone buzzed on the table and I glanced at it, my stomach twisting as I saw an unfamiliar name flash across the screen before he quickly snatched it up. "Private call," he said with a smirk, and disappeared into the bathroom. I swallowed hard, my hands clenched so tight my knuckles went white. This was the man I'd trusted with everything, and now every word, every gesture felt like a lie. I told myself to hold on a little longer, to stay calm and watch. If he was guilty, he would slip up, and when he did, I'd be ready. The following days felt like I was living in a movie where I had to play two roles at once: the loving partner who acted normal, and the detective secretly gathering evidence. Every morning I would make Daniel coffee, smile, and kiss his cheek, while inside I was screaming at myself for even touching him. Every night I would check the hidden voice recorder, listening to his phone calls, or the way he paced the room when he thought I was asleep. At first there was nothing suspicious, just the ordinary sounds of life, but on the third night something slipped through. I heard Daniel's voice low and hushed, whispering into his phone, "Yes, it's still there. Don't worry, she hasn't noticed anything." My entire body froze when I replayed the words over and over, my chest aching from the realization that he was indeed talking about me. I wanted to smash the recorder against the wall, but instead I sat there shaking with a cold fury I'd never felt before. I didn't confront him, not yet, because now I knew the truth. Instead, I doubled down. The next day, while he was gone, I borrowed a small laptop from a friend at work and used it to inspect the hidden camera. I had seen enough crime documentaries to know most cameras like that connected to a Wi-Fi feed. Sure enough, when I opened the settings, I found it had been linked to a device under Daniel's name. My throat tightened and tears blurred my vision. There it was, undeniable proof, staring at me from the screen. The man I trusted, the man I loved, had turned my sanctuary into a prison. That night I couldn't even look at him the same way. When he smiled and asked what I wanted for dinner, I forced myself to answer, "Anything's fine," while my heart was breaking inside. I knew I couldn't keep pretending forever, but I also couldn't just explode without a plan. If I confronted him in anger, he might erase the evidence, or worse, try to manipulate me into forgiving him. No, I had to outsmart him. I had to set my own trap, one that he wouldn't see coming until it was too late. The next morning, I woke up with a strange calmness, the kind you feel right before a storm hits. My decision was made. I was going to take back control. I spent hours at the library researching hidden surveillance laws, reading articles about digital forensics, and learning how to mirror data without leaving a trace. My hands trembled as I typed, but my mind was razor sharp. That night, while Daniel was asleep, I crept out of bed and moved silently to his office room. The glow of his laptop screen cast long shadows across the walls like ghosts. I plugged in a small USB stick I had bought earlier that day, and within minutes it copied all of his files, emails, and saved passwords. My heart thudded with every second as if it might explode. When I was done, I tucked the USB into my sock and tiptoed back to bed, my pulse still racing. The next day, Daniel was cheerful, overly cheerful, making jokes at breakfast, brushing his hand against mine like nothing was wrong. "You seem quiet," he said, his eyes searching mine. "Just tired," I replied, forcing a smile while my stomach turned. By then, I had everything I needed, recordings of his calls, the camera linked to his device, and soon, proof from his own files. But I didn't want revenge. I wanted justice. So I reached out to a close friend, Sarah, who worked in IT security. We met at a quiet cafe, my hands trembling as I slid the USB across the table to her. "Please tell me I'm not crazy," I whispered. She plugged it into her laptop and her eyes widened as she scrolled through the contents. "This is bad," she said softly. "He's been streaming your bedroom footage to a private server. There are even messages arranging to share it." My vision blurred as tears filled my eyes. "So it's real," I whispered, my voice cracking. Sarah squeezed my hand. "We can stop him, but you have to be smart. We'll get the evidence locked and ready first, then you can decide what to do." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. I had never felt so betrayed, but at the same time, a fire of determination was building inside me. I wasn't going to be his victim anymore. For the first time since I had found that camera, I felt like I had a weapon in my hands instead of just fear. Sarah and I spent hours over the next few days carefully gathering every piece of evidence we could. She showed me how to screenshot conversations, how to trace the IP addresses, and how to organize files so that nothing could be denied or deleted later. Every night, while Daniel laughed in front of the TV or texted on his phone, I was sitting just a few feet away quietly building the case that would destroy his lies. The hardest part was pretending I didn't know. When he kissed me goodnight, I had to keep my face steady and not flinch, though inside I felt sick to my stomach. I replayed his fake smile over and over in my mind, and it only fueled my determination. Then one evening, while he was taking a shower, I heard his phone buzz on the nightstand. My pulse shot up as I picked it up, my hands trembling. A notification from a private messaging app lit up the screen. "Upload the new footage tonight." The last one was perfect. My knees went weak, and for a moment I couldn't breathe. There it was, the proof that he wasn't just spying, he was sharing me with strangers. I placed the phone back exactly as it was, every cell in my body screaming in anger. The night I couldn't close my eyes. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, making a promise to myself. He wouldn't get away with this. Not with me, not with anyone else. The next day I took all the evidence and gave copies to Sarah for safekeeping. We both knew what came next would be dangerous, but I was ready. I needed Daniel to confess in his own words, to trap himself completely, so I devised a plan. I would act clueless, bring up the subject of privacy in casual conversation, and record everything. My hands were shaking just thinking about it, but my resolve was firm. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore, it was about reclaiming my power. The next evening, I cooked Daniel's favorite meal, the kind of dinner that made him relax and talk more. The smell of garlic and butter filled the kitchen as I stirred the pasta, my heart beating like a drum against my ribs. He came in smiling, kissed the top of my head, and said, "You're spoiling me tonight." I forced a soft laugh. "You work so hard, you deserve it," I replied, masking the bitterness that rose in my throat. Over dinner, I started weaving my trap. "I was reading an article today about hidden cameras," I said casually, twirling spaghetti on my fork. "Apparently lots of couples are discovering them in hotels or even their own homes." "Isn't that crazy?" He froze for a second before chuckling. "People are paranoid these days," he said, taking a sip of his wine. "Why would anyone spy on their partner?" His tone was light, but his eyes flickered nervously and I caught it. "I don't know," I said, keeping my voice even. "I guess sometimes people have secrets, or maybe they just like control." I watched him shift in his chair, his jaw tightening. The recorder hidden under the table captured every sound, every breath. "You don't think someone's spying on you, do you?" he asked, his voice forced into a laugh. "No," I said with a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "I'd know if they were." He swallowed hard and looked down at his plate, his fork motionless. My stomach twisted as I realized he was calculating, wondering how much I knew. I leaned back in my chair, keeping my expression soft and curious. "You'd tell me if you had a secret, right?" I asked, tilting my head. "Of course," he said too quickly. "I have nothing to hide." His voice cracked on the last word, and that was when I knew I had him. He excused himself soon after, muttering about a work call. But I stayed at the table, my hands clenched under the wood. The recorder had captured everything. His hesitation, his defensive answers, his fear. I stared at my glass of wine, my reflection distorted in the dark liquid, and I felt something shift inside me. The fear that had controlled me for days was gone. In its place was a cold, steady determination. The next move would be mine. The next morning, the air in the house felt heavier, like the silence itself was carrying a secret between us. Daniel moved around the kitchen, making coffee, pretending everything was normal, but I could see the tension in the way his shoulders hunched and the way he avoided my eyes. I played along, humming softly as I buttered toast, but inside I was burning with anticipation. I had the recordings, the files, and now his nervous reaction. The net was closing around him, and he didn't even realize it. Later that day, while he stepped out to take a phone call, I slipped into his office and positioned my phone under a stack of books, its camera aimed perfectly at his desk. I had rehearsed this moment in my mind over and over. When he returned, I leaned against the doorframe and asked in the calmest voice I could manage, "Daniel, do you ever feel like guilty about something?" He looked up sharply, his expression caught between confusion and fear. "What do you mean?" he asked, his tone defensive. I stepped closer, keeping my eyes on him. "I mean, is there anything you've done that you don't want me to know about?" His jaw tightened, his fingers tapping restlessly against the desk. "Why are you asking me that?" he snapped. "Because sometimes I feel like there are cameras on me," I said slowly, each word carefully chosen. "Like someone is watching me when they shouldn't be." His face drained of color, his lips parting slightly as if I had struck him. For a moment he said nothing, then forced a laugh that sounded hollow. "You're imagining things," he muttered, but his eyes darted to the corner of the room where the camera used to be. I caught it. My heart raced, but I stayed perfectly still, letting the silence hang like a noose. He fumbled with a pen, dropped it, and muttered under his breath, "This is ridiculous." But my hidden phone caught everything. His panic, his slip of the eyes, his trembling hands. When I finally walked away, leaving him alone in the room, I knew the trap had been set. He was unraveling, and soon he would expose himself completely. I only had to wait for the final crack to break him open. That night, the house felt like it was holding its breath. Daniel barely spoke during dinner, pushing food around his plate while sneaking glances at me as if trying to read my thoughts. I kept my expression calm, almost distant, and it seemed to drive him deeper into unease. After we cleared the dishes, I told him I was going to bed early and left him sitting on the couch with the TV flickering across his pale face. But I wasn't going to sleep. I set up my phone again, angled toward the living room, and left the recorder hidden nearby. From the bedroom I could hear faint murmurs, the low tone of his voice as he made a call. My pulse quickened. I waited until he went outside for better reception, then crept to the phone and checked the footage. His voice was sharp, frantic. "She knows something. I can tell. No, I don't know how much, but she's asking questions. If she finds out..." He paused, running a hand through his hair. "I'll handle it. Just give me more time." My stomach dropped, but at the same time a grim satisfaction spread through me. The proof was now undeniable. He had admitted it, even if indirectly. The final piece of the puzzle had fallen into place. I returned to the bedroom, my heart hammering, and lay there in the dark, waiting for him to come back inside. When he finally slipped into bed, he wrapped an arm around me, whispering, "I love you." As if those 3 words could cover the lies, I kept my body still, pretending to drift into sleep, while inside I was already planning my next move. Tomorrow I would go to the authorities. Tomorrow the world would see who he really was. For weeks I had felt trapped, but now I held the key to my freedom and his downfall. As his breathing steadied beside me, I stared into the darkness with wide, unblinking eyes. The man sleeping next to me thought he had control, but in reality, he was already caught in his own web. He just didn't know it yet. The next morning, the sun streamed through the curtains like it was announcing the start of a new chapter in my life. I got out of bed quietly, leaving Daniel still asleep, and gathered everything: my USB with his files, the recordings, the screenshots, and the little black camera that had started it all. My hands were steady now, not trembling like before. For the first time in weeks, I felt in control. I placed everything into a folder, locked it in my bag, and walked out the door without a word. At the police station, I sat across from an officer, my voice calm but heavy with everything I had endured. "I want to report someone," I said firmly, placing the folder on the desk. As they examined the evidence, their expressions turned serious, then grim. "You did the right thing coming here," the officer told me. "We'll take it from here." Relief washed over me like a wave, my chest finally loosening after carrying the weight of betrayal for so long. When I returned home later that evening, Daniel was waiting in the living room, his smile strained. "Where were you?" he asked. I looked him straight in the eyes and for the first time didn't flinch. "Somewhere you'll be going soon too," I said coldly. Confusion crossed his face, then fear when he saw the patrol car pull up outside. His mouth opened to protest, but the knock on the door silenced him. I stood back as the officers entered, their voices firm and commanding. Daniel's face went pale, his hands shaking as they placed him in cuffs. He glanced at me, his eyes pleading, but I felt nothing but a quiet satisfaction. The man who had violated my trust, my safety, my dignity, was finally facing the consequences of his actions. When the door closed behind him, I sank into the couch, tears rolling down my cheeks not from sadness, but from release. The silence in the house was different now, no longer heavy and suffocating, but clean and freeing. I realized then that I wasn't broken. I wasn't defeated. I had been tested in the cruelest way, but I had found the strength to fight back. That camera had been meant to control me, to trap me, but instead it became the reason I discovered my own resilience. And as I sat there breathing deeply, I made a promise to myself. Never again would I let anyone take away my power.